Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Hello, what's on Elephant and Castle Facebook page? I'm Nick from Retribe, and joining me today is Susan Meyers. And I'm really excited to have Susan on today because Susan is the mother of a guest that we had on a couple of weeks ago, Danny Meyers. And Susan, you know, we talked in this last couple of weeks, and I find your story and what you're doing so interesting. And I just wanted to bring you on just to kind of continue the stories of some of the things that me and Danny talked about. But you also are from the Elephant and Castle originally. That's where you grew up. Can you tell us a little bit about you know, who you are, what you do, and your experience in growing up in the Elephant and Castle community?
Yeah, certainly. Oh, thanks, Nick. Thanks for inviting me on the call as well. Yeah. So I come from the Elephant and Castle. Do you know what? I say that so often as well, and quite often I say it to kind of justify my character, because people say, you know, where did you get this kind of strength from and just this resilience? And I always put that down to my Elephant and Castle roots. And obviously, when I grew up, so I'm 62 now, 63 this year. When I grew up at the Elephant and Castle, it was quite a different place, as you can imagine. But I absolutely loved it. Obviously, I didn't know any different. And so I just thought that was kind of how everybody grew up, really. But I've got some really fond memories of the Elephant and everything that happened there. And all my family were around, and my grandparents. My granddad obviously was an entrepreneur, but I didn't realise that at the time. So he was a scrap metal merchant, so a rag and bone man. And but actually, he was obviously really quite wealthy because he had a shop. You know, my nan and granddad had a sweet shop, so I have lots of memories of that. Went to primary school and then to secondary school at the Elephant and Castle. My favourite food is still pie and mash to this day. Can't understand anybody that wouldn't enjoy pie and mash. And when I think about those days and describing it as an adult now with the experience that I've got, I would definitely say my biggest memory is community. And I don't say that because it's the word that we all banter around, but honestly, it just described it so well. Because in those days, very few people had lots of money. Clearly, my granddad had some money that wasn't obvious, but we kind of all were in the same position, really. So we didn't have that, almost that desire to have more. We were just enjoying what we had, and we made the most of what we had. So I've hugely fond memories of growing up at the Elephant and Castle, and I definitely think it shaped my character for the future.
It's one of the areas in London that I go through. You know, I used to go through quite a bit when the shopping center was still open, and it does have. I love immigration because I'm an immigrant, and I love the feeling of the community too, because there's just a slice of life there, and you know, I'm so grateful that we can do this work for the community. But I do, you know, I think it is a thing that we all, in a big city, it's something that there are a lot of, but many people miss out on because of their fears of taking part in community. And I know, like, that was one of the main reasons why my company is called Retribe, because and why we got involved with the Elephant and Castle community, because it's about helping people, you know, find connection. And it's something that me and your son talked about with sports. You know, we can find connection in sport, we can find connection in community, but it's something as humans we all need. So, you know, thank you for talking. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more going forward, but I want to ask you now about your career, because you've got this pretty esteemed career starting off. You know, you've worked in the prison services, you've worked at Broadmoor, you do a lot of work with mental health. Can you tell us how you got involved in your career, and you know, and also as a mother too of an athlete, and Carly as well, and you can talk a little bit about what they do, because I love the fact that you have children who actually pursued their passions and made careers out of it. So that's, again, another thing that we're going to talk about a little bit. But how did you get into your career?
Well, we were living in Crowthorne at the time, and just as you said, so Danny is the eldest by 4 years. So he started playing ice hockey when he was 4, and Carly started dancing when she was 3. And that was really local to where we were. And actually, Broadmoor was very local. We were living in Crowthorne at the time. And we had a building business, my husband and I. Obviously, he was doing the building, I was supporting him. And then we lost the building business. And a friend of mine said that there's a job at Broadmoor. It was just 6 months. It was covering maternity leave in the patient's complaints department. I'm smiling now because honestly, that was an adventure. So I went there for 6 months and I covered maternity leave. And after that, they asked me to stay. I got offered a full-time job in the wider prison, in the wider hospital, and I ended up staying there for 11 years. So yeah, it just started as a 6 month, really, just what can I do to make ends meet? Kylie was really young and just about to start school. So just as in most things in life, timing's never good, is it? You know, I think opportunities come along and it's never the perfect time and you have to make a decision. And I definitely made the right decision then to go and work at Broadmoor Hospital. So I did that for 11 years. Lots of interesting things happened there, as you can imagine. And then I got headhunted to go into the prison service. So I was working with somebody and they were opening a new prison, and they said that there were some things that could benefit from my skills. I think that was the way they talked about it. So again, I went there for just 6 months, just on secondment for 6 months. And after 6 months, I mean, it was hellish in as much as there was a lot of work to do. But after 6 months, I really felt like I had established some foundations and I knew there was new opportunities. And actually, it was a good time to break away from Broadmoor. I don't think you can ever really go back to something like that. I probably wouldn't have settled again. And so they offered me a full-time job as a governor grade, and I stayed there for 14 years. Well, I actually developed again in that role, and I ended up covering 5 prisons in England and Scotland, and so travelling around there. So, and we opened new prisons as well. So lots of things that other people didn't get an opportunity to do. Most people go into an established prison with all the policies and procedures, but opening a new prison, again, that's another experience. So I look back and, there's lots of things that I can dig into. I talk about it as my virtual toolkit. What can you dig into and find of an experience that you've had that's going to help you with that situation? And then just what did I take away from that? I think, what I saw in there was the whole of life, really. And mental health, that, as you've alluded to, a really, really big part of that. And what I talk about often is that what I see is that we as human beings, we respond in a normal way to an abnormal situation. You might think we're really crazy at the time and our mind is, whirling around and we can't make sense of it. But quite often it's an abnormal situation. It's something that we haven't come across before. And that's why our mind is all over the place. So when we look at it like that, quite often we are normal. We are behaving in a normal way. It just doesn't feel like that at the time. And as you say, that alongside that, I had Carly and Danny, who just blew everything out of the water, really, because I'd come home from work and having been involved with quite a lot of situations, and then suddenly the priority is I've got training tonight, or where's my tap shoes? That was my standard.
It's quite a juggle. I'm getting some firsthand experience with it at the moment, and it's it's something that, work is obviously a necessity. Being able to look after self, especially in my case where I have to look after my recovery and what I'm doing, but also like knowing that there are children out there who need to grow and flourish, and my partner has 3 young boys, and it's this thing of like finding this balance of nurturing them along the way, encouraging them. But what I have a hard time with, Susan, is when they say I don't want to go to something. Because they would rather sit at home and maybe play on a computer game or something like that. And that you want to encourage them to do it, but you don't want to be pushy. Because my dad, I've been around a lot of pushy parents, and I think this is the juggle bit, is you want to encourage your children to be able to pursue their passions in a gentle way where they can find their own feet. But what's the balance between being pushy or assertive and encouraging them lightly? So how do you not put them off, but as well as let them find their own feet?
I think you have to grow into it and learn yourself as well. So I've definitely learned some techniques that I've shared with parents, and also, funny enough, with my children, having practiced it on them for them to use on their children. So often I would have a discussion with them and something would happen, and disappointed is a word that is really quite powerful as well. And so sometimes I would use that, hopefully, in an appropriate way. Not disappointed in them, but disappointed that they don't want to carry on going to the gym class that you've paid for a whole season for, and also I used to, sometimes I would say, did I deserve to be spoken to like that? And they used to say, why don't you shout like other parents? I used to say, because this is so much more powerful. And it is about finding that balance. And obviously you reflect on your own childhood as well. I mean, I didn't have a bad childhood, but obviously as a child, there's some things you think, well, actually, that's not what I want to do again with my children. And sometimes you get it wrong, of course we do, but you have to, I always talk about coming from a place of love, which sounds really soft, but if your intentions are good, then I think there's, only so many mistakes that you can make. Your intentions were good. And it is about knowing the child. So Danny and Carly were similar in lots of ways, but then, they had some differences as well, and they would respond in a different way to different things. There isn't a manual, sadly, that says this is the way to be a good parent, but then children are not all the same either. But supporting them, and I didn't understand personal development at the time, but the category clearly was about being supportive. So I remember Danny coming off the ice once, and I said, oh, well done, love, you had a really good game. He said, you have to say that, Mum, you're my mum. And I thought, well, that was quite nice, actually, because clearly he thinks that's the role of a parent, is to be supportive. And I've heard him as an adult now reflect back on it. And he says, you were really, really supportive. And I think that was the key bit, was to be supportive. And they were not frightened to try something. I was really scared to try things in case I failed. But Danny and Carly were never frightened to try something, because failure to them wasn't the end of the world. It's always worth giving it a go, really.
You mentioned, like coming to a place from a place of love, and that may sound soft. Do you think that that's kind of an idea around what love is? Do you think that people maybe think that love is being soft rather than, something different? Do you think that these are kind of like concepts of what people think about around words? And that's something that I think that I would like to try to unlearn myself, that I thought that if something was love, it was soft and it was weak. Whereas actually what I've learned is that it isn't. So it's just a change of perception. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's really sad that we have these traditional norms and what's expected of us. I saw that so many times in the prisons. I mean, talking as a real stark reality, the fact that there's a perception that self-harm is a women's thing. Women self-harm and men don't. And I saw so many men that self-harmed and they had additional pressure because it's not expected of a man. I mean, that is really, really sad. Life is difficult. Get used to it. Life is hard. And sometimes we just make it so much harder. And there's certain things and stigmas and how you need to behave, like this men and women thing. And it's not good for men to cry. And, we know now, most of us know, hopefully, that is rubbish. There's absolutely nothing wrong with expressing your emotions. But if you are in that family situation or you're in that work situation where it's not accepted as okay, you've got additional pressure on you, along with whatever pressure has had an impact on you. So I was always really proud that Danny never worried about being himself. So he would be this like 6'3" guy that wasn't frightened to come up and give me a kiss. And his children do the same, his two boys. Yep. They will come up and, hi grandma, hi granddad, and I love you. And, they would say all of these things. And that probably makes me more proud, hearing them feel so comfortable expressing their feelings. And if we could just help people to feel comfortable doing that. There was a book that I read called Toxic Parents, just as I read it, because somebody had read it and said what a good book it was. And there's different sections in this book, and some apply to you and some don't. There was about alcoholic parents and what have you, and there was one section, and it was talking about being a moulded child. And I thought, how interesting is that? Because we think about our childhood and the impact it's had on us, but if we see ourselves as a moulded child, who conforms to what is expected of us, we then go on to be moulded adults. Now, what excited me was the fact that a mould can be broken. When I understood that, I thought, there's hope, isn't there? And as human beings, there's certain things that we need. We need community, but we need hope. And knowing that whatever happened to you, you was a moulded child, means that you can break that mould. And you can break it like that. You can actually make that decision. Enough. I am not going to carry on this perception or this belief of what I should do. Because inside, we know what we want to do. We all know what we want to do. We're just frightened to say that because we're worried about what the impact will be and what the response will be. So I think that was quite a breakthrough moment for me, understanding that you could break the mold.
Yeah, I think for me, as growing up just in the same environment that Danny did, that real men don't cry, real men don't ask for help, real men can sort out all their own problems, and and those are the things that my dad just learned from his dad, and they just learned from each other, and parents, and and coaches and teachers, that's all they learned. So that's all they had to pass on. And for me, the mold broke when I was 45 years old, but I was dying, of alcoholism. So it took for me to have that old idea that I can't ask for help to be crushed, by something external, so that finally I could actually reach out and say, help me, to somebody. And that is the pivotal moment of my life, is that asking for help was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of great strength. And it propelled me into going through a recovery program, and to actually get into situations where I can talk tenderly to other men, for them to be able to say, do you know what? I recognize what you went through, so I'm going to ask for help too, because it helped you. And I think, and this is the whole idea around tough and tender, is that we do, we have to honor that there are some great traits of being a man. There are some wonderful traits of resilience and some toughness, but then there's also these other beautiful concepts around love and compassion and tenderness. And that's why I'm such a fan of your son, because when I sit and talk with him, he's got so much tenderness, and he's passing that on to his boys, and they're going to pass it on to their children, and it's going to be, and we are breaking molds. And but one of the things that I'm battling myself is the ego of needing to change others, and that's what I know that I can't do. All I can do is show up as my best self, so that people can learn from my experiences. And I think that we can guide people so that they can shatter their own molds. And it's around having conversations that saying, hey, love is not a weak word. It's the most powerful word. We just need to navigate around giving men, because that's what I'm good at, a language to be able to speak. And maybe going back to the prison services, where you see a bunch of men that are incarcerated, for whatever reasons. How do you, were there, I'm interested to know about the rehabilitation. Do they get spaces for them to talk, so that they can, talk about self-harming, they can talk about alcohol or drug use, so that they can actually try to evoke some kind of transformation within the service itself, and then to the men that are incarcerated?
I'd like to answer that in two ways, really. From the perspective of an offender, so somebody that's actually incarcerated in custody, but also from staff, because both categories see situations that are completely untoward. They haven't come across this before. And I remember when I left I actually left the prison service. I gave a little speech and I said, I'd like to really base it on Oprah Winfrey's What I Know for Sure. And one of the things I spoke about was the courage that I saw every day. So I saw courage from the prisoners, that they wake up in the morning in situations that quite often they hadn't expected to be in, and they have to get through that day somehow. Being in this situation, knowing that at the end of the day, nothing's going to change really, that they haven't made an impact on the world, they haven't been with the people they want to be with, they haven't grown necessarily as people, or they can't use that growth, but they still have to get through that day. And that takes real courage to do that. I'm a real firm believer that short sentences don't work, because I know that there are some really good things that happen in prisons. I know for sure that there are great education systems and services. The majority of the education is based on basic numeracy and literacy, teaching people to read and write. I've always believed that when people come into custody, you have a unique opportunity to work with them. Quite often people can have quite transient lives and quite chaotic lives, but for that period of time, you've got an opportunity to help their health education. You know, people have been involved with substance misuse. They've not got a great relationship with their GP. They've usually gone there with drug-seeking behaviour, so they've never discussed their basic health. You know, so you've got all of these undiagnosed diseases. You've got diabetes, you know, you've got chronic heart disease, just really, really basic stuff that has never been addressed or treated, and they don't know what's happening to their body. That is, I've got some stories about that are shocking, that as adults, you actually don't know what's happening to your body because you're missing out on that bit of your education. You've got, as I say, we've got education there, some real good understanding now about vision boards and having a goal and having a belief in yourself. Low self-esteem is this thread that just runs throughout the whole service. You know, if you look at people's histories and what's happened to them, you can see actually this is what's impacted on you. I'm not condoning what people do. That was not part of my role. My role was about keeping people safe. There's some really good people that work in the prison service. It's not about locking people up. The emphasis is very much on you know, supporting people so that they have information when they leave prison, that they can use that information maybe in a different way to pursue their goals. So they get information that they didn't have before. And though there are definitely services there. From the side of an officer and staff, I am trained in critical incident stress debriefing. So I trained in that when I was at Broadmoor. And if I may, I'd like to just share a story with you. So this is a real good insight into how healing goes on within a group. So I remember one situation where there had been an awful incident at night. So what had happened was, sadly, a prisoner had set fire to his cell and he was in the cell. And there was a young officer that was on duty. Now, they're all in lockdown, so there's very few staff there, and you know, there's very few people. Only the senior officers have got keys, so everybody's kind of locked in, but all the prisoners are locked in their cells. So this young officer became aware that there was a fire in a cell and there was a prisoner in there, and he raised the alarm immediately. And what happened was there was all the emergency people came rushing. All the other officers came in. They got the breathing equipment. They went into the cell. They pulled the man out, the prisoner out. Horrendous situation, really not in a good state. I mean, just horrific to see this chap in this situation. So what happened afterwards was we had a critical incident stress debriefing. And this is where everybody that was involved, however small, in the situation, come together. So whatever discipline they are, wherever they come from, and sometimes it's somebody that changed their shift. So they were supposed to be on shift. They swapped with their best friend. and their best friend did that shift for them and their best friend got injured. So just think about how that person is feeling, because their best friend is now severely injured because of changing their shift. So all of these dynamics are happening in the room. So what you do in this situation is you all come together and we talk about what happened first of all. So who became aware of the situation first? Now, this young officer, he hadn't been back to the prison since the incident. He was so traumatised by this, he hadn't been back. And in fact, it was his best friend that dropped him off and said, "You are going to this. I'm taking you and you are going to go in." So he comes back into the situation. We're in this room and he says, "Well, you know, I was on duty and this is what happened." And I just keep thinking, I should have gone in, I should have gone in. Now, this is where the healing started, because he's a young officer, very new. And one of the older officers, quite a senior officer, said, no, mate, you did exactly the right thing. The policy says you don't go in the cell, you get help. And in fact, what you did ultimately saved that prisoner's life, because you raised the alarm and you got all the breathing equipment ready. You got everything in place. So when we came in through those doors, we did not lose a second. We had the breathing equipment, we had everything we needed, and we went straight into that room and we got that chap out. If you had gone in, we would have had 2 casualties.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have been ready. We would have lost time and we could have lost both of you. That is powerful. That was somebody saying, you were right. I'm experienced and I'm telling you that was the right thing to do. And each of them was saying, I was really scared. I've been doing this job for 25 years. That's the worst I've ever seen. So everybody else is thinking, oh my goodness, it's okay to be scared. I'm feeling like this and you're telling me you're feeling the same. So this conversation carries on, and they talk about, quite often there can, you know, like most services, you can have different departments. So you would have officers and you would have healthcare. And the officers were saying, oh, I was so pleased when the healthcare arrived. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, thank goodness you're here. And the healthcare are thinking, my goodness, I can't believe the officers are saying this about us. And so all of that community came together on that night. Everybody was in the same position and they were sharing with each other how grateful they were that each of them were there. And the feeling was, I said very little, I facilitate it. I just facilitate the conversation. But then it takes over, and the healing then that goes on in that room, and you can see people's bodies changing as they're relaxing. And they were talking really honestly. I mean, these were people that were really scared. There was one situation where somebody had just been promoted and they were more senior, but they'd handed the radio over to the person that didn't get the job. So previously that person was thinking, well, I can't believe this. He gave it to me, left it to me. I had to do all of this. But then the chap that handed the radio over, he said, oh my goodness, I was really worried at that stage because I knew people could really get hurt here. You know, there was a situation where we had this fire and what have you. And I just felt that John was more experienced. And I thought, if I give the radio to John, John has the experience to keep everybody safe. And so that's what I did. So suddenly John, instead of thinking, he's left it to me, I got lumbered with this or what have you, he's thinking, my goodness, that chap had the courage to say, you can handle this better than me. You can keep people safe. And I want people to be safe. So put my egos aside. This is about doing the right thing. So sorry, it's quite a long story, but my goodness, the healing that goes on when people get together and they express how they feel, because that encourages others to feel comfortable.
And what a powerful story, Susan. Thank you so much for sharing it. And I'm just, as I was thinking about it, you know, you use the word healing, vulnerability, truth, and then just as at the end, to to place your ego aside. And for me, for all of those things to happen, for all of that healing to take place, egos needed to be placed aside for the young chap to fulfill, to hand over the radio, for the young chap to do his training and to raise the alarm and to do with what he was trained. Egos need to be placed aside. And you think about it, what a severe, life-changing, life-threatening situation in that environment. But that situation, crisis appears, and how are we going to deal with it? It can happen in the corporate environment, can happen in a team environment, can happen in a home environment. And for me, the one key is just as you said towards the end, is we need to displace our ego. And that's the trick. That's the hard thing that we need to go through life, because it's this balance of self-esteem, needing to feel good about myself, but also needing to feel vulnerable enough to go, I don't know. I don't know, just to say, I don't know. And to try to go with what we learn and what we're trained and and our instinct of what's right and what's wrong. How do we create, work environments where we displace ego, but still need to have leaders?
You have to be comfortable with yourself. And I would say I wasn't comfortable with myself until I was in my 50s. So please don't leave it as long as I left it. Working on yourself and just being comfortable with who you are and being comfortable with not knowing all the answers. I always think I'm a really good CEO, because I think the role of a CEO is to get experts around the table and to be comfortable saying, I need your expert opinion. What is it? What should we be doing now? And so going to people and saying, this is what I need, how can you help me? I'm really good at facilitating situations. I'm good at facilitating meetings. That's my strength. I'm good at organising. But then I go to other people and say, I need your expertise. Can you help me here? What should we do in this situation? And if you can feel comfortable doing that and know that you don't need to know all the answers, in fact, by doing that, makes you even better. I've always surrounded myself with a really strong team. I see quite often in business where you have CEOs or you have senior managers that are really frightened to recruit people that are stronger than themselves, that have more knowledge than themselves. There's a really great book by John Maxwell called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And it is so true in life. If you have that fear that somebody is better than you, you will never grow yourself. And you will never surround yourself with people that will help you grow. But if you have that confidence that this is what I'm good at, and so I need to be surrounding myself with others that are good at other things as well. You do not have to be good at everything. So find out what you're good at. Everybody's good at something. When your mental health is on the floor, you will struggle to work out what you're good at. So ask your best friend, because your best friend will know. Somebody will be able to tell you what you're good at, because you may not be able to see that. And then just acknowledge that.
No, I agree completely. I think that being in a place, first of all, for leaders, to be able to be a vulnerable leader, to me is what I see as a strength. When a leader of a team or a sales team or a sports team, when they can express some kind of vulnerability of saying, I don't know all of the questions, I don't know all of the answers, sorry here, but we can ask questions. And I think that takes a level of trust. You need to be able to trust that person who's saying, I don't know, because you need to trust that they do have some kind of vision. So there's this balance of being vulnerable, but also knowing, but also knowing that there is a pathway in or out of a crisis situation. And that takes time. And I think that's what a lot of people, again, when you talk about when people are scared, they're when I'm scared, I do something to protect myself, right? And it'll be make up a story. It'll be like, I won't show my truth. So I think there's this balance of being able to show vulnerability around, this, I'm scared of this situation, but not showing a weakness. So I kind of maybe we talk a little bit about creating trust within environments, about, you know, showing vulnerability, but also, you know, the balance of vulnerability and assertiveness is, I don't know if that's the right word, or resilience, or some kind of inner strength, or confidence that leaders can express.
I think the way that you can express that is to keep asking questions when you're speaking to somebody, instead of thinking that you know all the answers. So I'm a talker, but I had to learn to listen more. And when you listen and you just ask those questions, the answers will come, and people enjoy sharing things with you, and they enjoy helping and giving that advice and supporting you, and giving people the opportunity to do that is really strong, because you're not actually giving something to yourself, you're giving something to them as well, just by allowing them to help you. I mean, just that feeling, you know yourself, if you give somebody a gift, the feeling that you get is huge, isn't it? And it's the same with help and advice and support. So if you can get to the stage where, even if you're interacting with one person, that feeling of interaction, it really does help you to make sense of what's going on in your mind. I did a series of podcasts called Mind Blowing Decisions. And the reason I called it that is because when your mind is in a chaotic state, every decision seems mind blowing, even what you're going to have for lunch. Every decision seems mind blowing. Whereas if you can get to that point where you've got some space in your head, you take information in, you make sense of it, and then you make an informed decision. You decide what you're going to do next. So that's your optimum mental health. Your optimum mental health is when you have that space in your head to take information in, and then decide where it fits in, and then what you're going to do next. So that's where we want to be, really. And if you have a calmness, I remember again, you can see what I look like. I always look like this. Usually got my pearls on, even when I was in the prisons. Always had my, always looked the same. Always drunk out of a cup of tea and a cup and saucer. And I always thought that people knew that if they used to say, if Susan's got a lipstick on, everything's fine. And sometimes I was in situations and I could see officers and I could see staff and I could see this situation really quite volatile, and people will look back, they'll keep checking you, and if you are okay, it gives them the reassurance that everything is fine, it hasn't gone past that point. Now clearly there was times I wasn't okay, and inside I was thinking, oh, this is challenging, but I was calm, I looked okay, nothing had changed in me, and it gives people that reassurance that we haven't gone past that point where we're all out of control. I do think that if you can have that air about you, if you can have that calmness, it will reflect on the teams that you're working with and the groups that you're with. I mean, that's how I've seen it happen.
Yeah, I think that you're correct, and I think that that's around my own personal growth around mindfulness, trying to give myself some space in the morning to clear my mind of selfish thoughts of what do I need today to feel good. And it's around some meditation, and it's a practice. And that's the one thing that I do want people to know, Susan, is that all of this is a practice to get into a better space today than I was in yesterday. And then I know that I've got to try to grow more tomorrow, and I've got to grow, because it's, this is, I want to say life isn't linear, or time isn't linear, because that's a big thing. But I mean, in the true essence of growing older and one day at a time, and getting more experiences for me, something that I need to strive to try to obtain is this, humility and calmness that you talk about. Because sometimes, and that is one thing, is that the perception of the moment is that this is the worst moment ever, and this crisis and this thing is the worst thing ever. And then it could be a day or a week or a month later, I'm going, why was I in so much panic and fear over it? Here's the answer. And I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to learn to know, is the first thing that comes up in here is normally something that I need to sit with, because I know the answers come from here and not here. This is a bit of confused space. So it's around kind of giving myself some time. And I said, you know, for me, my practice is through meditation and just learning some kind of calming and breathing exercises, which, you know, coming from, again, the environment that I came from, people would have said that that's like tree hugging, yogurt eating kind of stuff, but it certainly does help.
I think also
I don't mind hugging trees either.
I'm honestly, I'm open. I'm so open-minded as well. I've got much better as I've got older. I think a great tip to share with people is to bookend their day. So you start just as you're describing. I do the same as you, Nick, as well. So I have a great morning routine now. So and if you get a great morning routine and a great evening routine, you're actually controlling what's happened to a degree in the middle of the day. So you know, I get up in the morning, I do a meditation as well. I come from the Elephant and Castle. We used to think that was woo-woo. I'm out there. I'm okay with saying, you know, this really works. We can think what we want. The reality is it makes me feel so much better. So 10-minute guided meditation, 5 things I'm grateful for. I do some affirmations, wash my hair every day, dry my hair. It's just like cleaning my teeth. As soon as that hairdryer goes on, there I am with my affirmation. You know, I am strong, I am worthy, I am me. That's powerful. It just comes up, you know, comes out. And then when I'm in the car, I always listen to a motivating audio. It really does build me up. And I used to do this all the time when I went to the prisons, because I knew that there were some challenges that lay ahead. But by the time I got to the prisons, I've done some meditation. I'm grateful for some things. I've built myself up with the way I've spoken to myself, and I've listened to a great audio. I get into the prison and I'm in a really strong state. You know, I'm feeling good. So yes, some things are going to happen, but the chances are I'm going to be able to deal with them because I'm feeling good. Day takes its course and whatever happens, happens. But then I do something similar at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, my wind down routine will be similar. I will spend some time having the same routine, and that familiarity is what keeps me sane. Because quite often what really does jolt us and make our mind begin to wander is something that is unfamiliar. So if you can have a familiar morning, a familiar evening, bookend your day, then you've got so much strength inside you to control whatever happens.
I can't agree with you more. And they're tools. There are tools that we learn through life, through spiritual practices or just any other kind of practices. That they're tools that are given to us. And when I use the tools, as you said at the beginning, life happens. You know, life is full of ups and downs and challenges and beautiful moments and terrifying moments. But if we use the tools that are available to us too, and I think again, it's this ability, this thing of like, is Nick going to solve the problem? Or am I going to step out of the way and kind of just be guided? You know, when you go into like this kind of sixth sense type mode where you go, I don't know where that answer came from, but it wasn't from up here, because my answer would have been, what can I do to protect me? You know, rather than something through, you know, again, through meditation practices and just becoming, I don't know, I suppose just a channel of thoughts rather than the individual silo of ego. That always works better for me. So I think those are wonderful tips to give people, Susan. I know we're just running out of time, but I wanted to go back to the parent thing because I know that's something that we're both really passionate about in helping parents, and it's something that I'm learning. It's things that I try to unlearn and relearn new ways. But it was just a question of with Danny and Carly, and I wanted to ask, because we said at the beginning, I was going to ask you, what would you do different? Because I want to learn from you. What would you do different today with Danny and Carly than you did back then? What have you learned from I suppose from any experiences that you've had? Because I need to take a tip into how to work with these 3 young boys that I've got in my life now.
Do you know what, Nick? This is not coming from a place of arrogance at all. I don't know what I would have done different, because I look at them now and they are really great people. You know, they are kind, they make mistakes, but they do come from a place of love. I don't know. I was learning myself, my husband, Lester, and I, we were learning as parents one of the things we did do really well was we did support them, whatever they wanted to do. And I interviewed our grandson, Joel, who's Danny's eldest, on my podcast about mental health. And I said to him, what advice would you give to adults that really want to support young people but don't really know how to support them? And he said, do you know what, Grandma? He said, I know that adults really want to look after us, and parents want to make sure that we don't get hurt and all of those things. But what I would say is just support us and believe in us. So keep pouring belief into us and let us try things. And I thought, my goodness, there's some words of wisdom there. And I thought that is so true. And lots of parents have listened to that particular interview with their children, and they've had a discussion about it. And the parents have said, you know, natural thing is to stop them getting hurt or coming to harm, or, you know, being upset because something's happened. And what the young people are saying is part of our growth. We know you're there, so you won't let anything really bad happen to us. But within that, we just support us, just breathe belief into us and let us know that we can do that. And I think Lester and I did that well with Danny and Carly. We breathed belief into us. We didn't really know what we were doing. So I don't know what I would do different, because I'm at an age in my life now, I see the end result. And quite honestly, I'm really proud of the end result. So if I did anything different, the end result may not have been the same. And they did, you know, they did get hurt. They did learn some hard lessons, but it made them stronger. They are people that are not frightened to say, I'm feeling scared now, or I'm challenged, or I'm not sure I can do this, but I'm going to give it a go. And they feel comfortable saying that.
I think going back to my childhood, the things that I'll always know that I was loved. And I think that was one great thing that my parents did, is that they were never scared of the affection or the saying, I love you and I'm proud of you. And those were the things that always fueled me on. Yes, there was lots of mistakes made, but I think that at the core, children want to know that they're loved. And I know Danny and Carly are loved. And I know that, you know, I was loved a lot too. So at the end of the day, I love the word love, because I think it is everything. And I think it's something that is in all of us, and we just need to tap into a little bit more and not be so scared of using that word.
I mean, that's what we should all be aiming for. If we can crack that, there is a really fabulous family manifesto that Brene Brown has. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I would encourage everybody to just look it up on online. It's Brene Brown Family Manifesto, and she's a mother, and what she basically says is, you will always have a home here. This will always be your safe place. It will always be filled with love. We will not always get it right, but just know whatever happens, you are part of this family, and we will all grow together. And when sad things happen, we will cry together, but you'll always, always be part of this family. And just listen to it. And I thought, oh, how amazing is that? If all the parents could just share that with their children, it sums it up really. I wish I had that when I became a parent, because I would have known what to do then.
Yeah.
That's how, you know, that's how good it is. It's like, yes, that's what it is. Just create that environment that is not perfect, but it allows people to grow and to show your vulnerability as parents to your children, showing your vulnerability.
I've got a lot of learning to do, but I'm okay with that.
I've got lots of learning to do. Honestly, Nick, I am enjoying learning more than ever before in my life. I have not finished yet every day, and I'm learning so much from my grandchildren, and I have learned a lot from my children. Learning is not always from other people that you think are wiser. You know, learning from your children is hugely beneficial.
Yeah. Yes. You know, I've loved this chat, Susan. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I've loved it too, Nick. Absolute joy, honestly, to be able to have a discussion like this. It, really, you know, fills me up. Really, I think that is a great part of the day, isn't it? Being connecting with somebody where you can be honest and just share experiences and each learn from it. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much for joining me and us at the What's on at Elephant and Castle. And thank you for joining us. Don't forget, you can, on this Thursday at 11 a.m., I'm going to be holding the last of this month's topics around tough and tender. So the link will be in the page. Again, thank you, Susan, and have a beautiful rest of your day. And I hope fairly soon we can all see each other, maybe down at the rink for lunch or something soon.
We'll have this seat waiting for you, Nick. Look forward to that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Bye. Bye.